610-26. And, we continued our conversation. Look, what is a woman's place, so to speak, in sports? Or maybe more appropriately, if you're a guy driving around, do you consider sports, a man's world, so to speak? And you had asked me, he's like, what's the difference? You said you respect John McClain's opinion and he didn't play. And I said, I don't really know. Maybe I can't put a handle on it. Somebody who obviously sees it from the other side is Meagan Riley. She joins us right now on the Bud Light Hotline. Meagan, thanks for joining us and the conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. A woman's role in sports is to look pretty and not talk very often.
Yeah, no, and
I'm not being serious.
I know that. And, we talked about that kind of when we got into this conversation, because Greg had said, well, what about a Susie Colbert or an Erin Andrews? And I said, well, they're not exactly, they unfortunately kind of fall into that. They're better looking than, Dr. What was his name? Dr. Jerry Buss or whatever, because otherwise they're a sideline reporter. When you're dealing with, I guess, the discrimination from the other side. What do you think?
Well, I know the discrimination is there, but I've made a decision since day one, since the first time I ever had a position or did something where I was one of the only or I was the only female. And this goes back to high school days. I played sports, and I played on the boys' teams. And I always said, if I'm going to roll with the boys, I'm going to do what they do, and I'm going to do it even better. And that has carried over into my career. I've covered the Rockets. I've covered the Texans. I worked for the Rockets. I currently work for CBS. I work for the Chronicle. And I know that when I go to work, that I want to do a better job than the man next to me. And if I fall short of that, I can at least say at the end of the day, I tried harder, I worked harder, and I was there on the job, and I was there busting my butt longer and harder than the man standing next to me.
All right, Anna, let me ask you this, because there seems to be, there's a disconnect between being able to be a reporter and being able to have your opinion respected. Do you see that? In other words, I don't think anybody can doubt your credibility as a reporter, just like the caller talked about Robin Roberts. But I don't really remember Robin Roberts working at ESPN infiltrating a lot of her opinions. So when it comes time to, you guys are all sitting around covering the Rockets, or you're sitting around covering the Texans, and you report the news, then it comes to your opinion with regard to that sports news. Do you feel like there's a disconnect at that point in time?
I don't. I think it does happen with a lot of women, because if you look at the general description of what a sideline reporter is and should be, it's just to ask those fluff questions. And that stuff drives me crazy. Whether it's a man covering a college football game and he asks the coach something at halftime, or it's a female walking onto an NBA court to ask an NBA coach something during postgame. A lot of those questions, to me, are useless. They're a waste of time, and I'd rather get to the commercial break faster and get back to the game sooner. But the average, in my mind, when I think of a sideline reporter, I think of a female who's attractive, who asks tough questions. But every now and then you do have a woman that can not only write the topic, can report the topic, but is a very opinionated person on that topic as well. I think, obviously, being that there are more men doing that you're going to hear more opinions, you're going to respect more opinions that come from men. But I think because there are so many women not being that opinionated person, they are mostly being the fluff question asking sideline reporter, then yes, there can be the disconnect. But if there's that person that is obviously knowledgeable on the topic, can report what's going on, and I'm going to respect their opinion as well if it's a subject with which they spend a lot of time with and they're very knowledgeable. Yeah,
Anna, it's interesting, and just thinking about that and your comments, there's two that are commentators on sports, Christy Brennan from USA Today and Jackie McMullen, I think for the Boston Globe, you see every now and again on Around the Horn. Those are the two, females that I do respect their opinion, and I have no problem actually listening to them, and actually the gender almost falls by the wayside.
Yeah, that's correct. I can name a few more names. Her name just dropped my mind, which is horrible. I should have her name in my head right now, but she covers the Dallas Cowboys, and she is the current president of the Hall of Fame committee. She's the one that leads the group of men that cover the NFL across this country, and they're the ones that place former great NFL players into the Hall of Fame. It's a woman that leads that charge. And even if she wants to talk baseball, I'm going to respect what she has to say, because I know the words that come out of her mouth are very well thought of. They are researched, they are informed, and they are backed by facts, as well as, just to mention that she's had an outstanding reputation in the business, and if she wants to start having opinions on other things, I'll listen, because I respect her as a reporter, as a journalist, and as somebody that's worked in sports for many years.
Well, Anna,
Shereen Williams, that's the name.
We were talking about John McClain, and Brian was saying, John has great inside sources. And my thing is that you could have the very same inside sources and report the exact same thing, but don't you feel like you're fighting a bigger uphill battle to get somebody to listen to your point of view?
Well, if we're talking Texans, I've been around that team for 5 or 6 years now. I wouldn't say that at all. Now, if I wanted to call somebody with the NFL PA or Roger Goodell, I don't have those numbers in my phone. But if I needed to, I could go and get them.
Right.
But I take away the gender. What John McClain has is the reputation and the decades of experience in that industry. That's why he is so well respected. And he's also got the gift of gab, which is something that you can't learn. But, I see other women that do the exact same thing. Shereen Williams, like the name I just mentioned. He calls her for stuff. She calls him for stuff. They are one and the same, but one's a female, one is a male, and they're both respected equally. Maybe Shereen even more, because she's the current president of the Hall of Fame committee. She's the one that appears on the different various ESPN shows throughout the week. And John is very well respected, but I don't think that a woman couldn't do the same exact thing. And there are times, and they may be few and far between, that McClain does come to me and say, what was this? What did I miss? What did you think about what he said? And, what was that person like? Or what happened today? Or whatever. And to be able to contribute to anything that he may need is very satisfying, because I do respect him tremendously. But it may be few and far between, but I think a woman could do the job that he does if they had the similar skills. And I don't mean gender being a skill by any means.
Anna Meagan Rayleigh on Sports Radio 610 with Brian Straw and Greg Cook. Now, here's the thing that I think is, I guess maybe missing the kind of the overall flow, because I don't look at you and say, you know what, you're not credible, or you're not capable of doing the job, or any woman for that matter. But I think when we use as examples, and it's not fair to compare you to, again, John McClain, because of the experience factor and be able to what he brings to the table. But when you look
he is a little bit older. I'm 28.
Oh yeah,
He's 32.
And that's what I'm saying. That's
35.
that's not a fair. That's not fair to you or to this discussion, I don't think, because, you're not comparing apples to apples. But if you look up in Dallas, is this woman, because I got to be honest with you, that's a name that I is new to me. I don't know whether or not she's...
You should look her up. You really need to know who Shereen Williams is, because she is one of the most respected journalists in all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's
within her fraternity. Are you telling me that the guys driving around on sports radio in Dallas all know her, and that she's a regular on one of those stations?
Yes. If you had access to the president of the Hall of Fame committee, and that's just one committee, she's on several, you would use her as a credible source any day of the week.
Okay. Okay.
And she didn't get that just because she ran for the position and had some prettier posters in the hallways at school.
Right, but that's running a vote.
She's respected across the country.
And there's there is a separation between whether or not she can report or be credible in reporting, and whether or not a guy wants to respect that opinion, if you follow me.
No, I totally get it.
Okay.
But if a guy, let's say a listener is really interested in the topic at hand, He's going to want to know the information and the opinions from the person that is the most knowledgeable person. If he chooses not to respect that information because it came out of a voice that sounded a little more female than the men in the studio, then that's that dude's problem, and he's going to miss out on some very vital information if he's that huge of a fan. Now, if he's just a fan of being a dude and he wants to hear locker room talk, I could probably contribute because, heck, I was, I've been one of the boys for years now. But, if he chooses to ignore Shireen Williams' opinion because her name is Shireen and not Sean, well, then that's his loss.
That's why I can't ever listen to Ryan Seacrest on our going to the 3-4. I just won't listen to him. I don't think he's credible.
And on that note, hey, Anna Meagan, appreciate your yeah. Now you're being sexist, but you'll listen to him talk about Coach Purses? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, man. That's a reach there. Anna Meagan, thanks. That was wonderful.
Thanks so much for having me. And if you ever need somebody participating in your sports, I'll outdo you.
I'm without question. Thanks, Anna Meagan.
Brian's pretty good at hacky sack. You don't know.
Oh, listen to you.